Before I get started, I would like to thank you for all the support you guys have been showing me, and now we are almost at 300 subscribers. If you are new here and enjoy the best and chilling true story accounts, show your appreciation by liking and subscribing. Here are 3 true terrifying camping stories. Let's begin. When my husband surprised us for the camping trip last summer, I never expected it would become the most terrifying experience of my life. The week before, he excitedly told me and the kids that he had found a remote campground surrounded by lush forest trails, perfect for hiking and exploring nature. It sounded idyllic, roasting marshmallows, sleeping under the stars, leaving the stress of work and school behind for a few days. The kids couldn't contain their excitement as we packed up the car and headed out early Saturday morning. The drive to the campground took us deep into the countryside, far from any towns or cities. After a few hours on increasingly narrow and winding roads, we turned onto a bumpy dirt trail labeled with a faded wooden sign reading Big Forest Campground. Dense woods crowded in on both sides as we slowly made our way down the long path pockmarked with potholes filled with last night's rainfall. A thick canopy of leaves blocked out the sunlight, casting an eerie greenish glow over the otherwise pitch-black forest floor. Finally, we reached the campground, a small cleared area encircled by the imposing trees. A few other tents and RVs were scattered around the site, billowing smoke from their fires, mingling with the scent of pine needles and moss. We parked at our designated spot and eagerly set up our tent, while the kids explored the nearby trees and laughed with excitement. That first evening was perfect. We cooked hot dogs over a crackling fire while listening to the calming sounds of the nearby creek and hooting owls. Tired from a long travel day, we all slept soundly that night, cozily tucked into our sleeping bags inside the tent. The next morning after a hearty breakfast, we decided to check out one of the hiking trails marked on the map given to us by the campground attendant. Grabbing some water bottles and snacks, we headed down the clearly marked dirt trail leading out from the campground into the lush forest. That day we spent hours wandering along the winding trail, taking in the towering pines, colorful wildflowers, and serene meadows that opened up occasionally along the path. My youngest was thrilled when we stumbled upon some deer grazing in a clearing. Heading back before sunset, we enjoyed another relaxing evening dipping our toes in the creek and telling stories around the flickering glow of our campfire. Again, we turned in early, the fresh forest air making our eyes heavy. Sometime in the pitch black of the night, I woke with an uneasy feeling. The utter stillness and silence was oppressive. Outside the vinyl walls of our tent, the night forest felt foreboding, as if it was watching and waiting. I quietly crept outside, wary of making any sound that would wake my family. Our campfire had died down to faintly glowing embers, barely cutting through the inky darkness surrounding our camp. I listened for the usual forest sounds, leaves rustling, owls hooting, crickets chirping. But there was nothing, just deafening silence. I shone my flashlight toward the surrounding trees, hoping to calm my growing unease. But instead I was met with a disturbing sight. The clearly marked hiking trail we had easily followed just yesterday had vanished into the dense woods. Uneasy and disoriented, I hurried back into the tent to wake my husband. In hushed whispers, I told him what I had discovered. Neither of us could explain what happened to the trail. As the first light of dawn began creeping through the trees, we cautiously ventured out, scouring the forest for any sign of the trail that had guided us there, but now seemed to have disappeared overnight. With growing dread, we realized we were surrounded by trackless woods on all sides. We had no way to hike out of this increasingly ominous forest. Doing our best not to alarm the kids who were still blissfully unaware, we went out making breakfast, but our jumpiness was palpable. A choking uneasiness hung in the air as we pondered our predicament. We were isolated and lost in some vast, unseen wilderness. While nibbling half-heartedly on some granola bars, my son asked about exploring more trails that day. His innocent excitement pierced through my gathering dread. Fighting to keep my voice calm, I said maybe we could go for a short hike later on. But then my daughter gave a yelp and pointed toward the tree line behind our tents. Crude symbols had been roughly carved into the bark during the night: circles, triangles, jagged lines, ominous and unexplained. We spent the rest of that day on edge, futilely combing the woods for any trail or sign of civilization, but finding only endless trees in every direction. As the sun began dipping below the canopy, we gathered a massive pile of firewood, hoping to keep the swelling darkness at bay for one more night. After forcing down some hot dogs, the kids shuffled nervously into the tent. But sleep did not come easy. Outside, the whispering shadows seemed to creep ever closer. The symbols on the trees appeared to stare menacingly through the thin nylon walls of our flimsy shelter. As I lay wide awake, clutching my children, I couldn't silence the growing dread that we were being watched, trapped by sinister forces toying with us. The next morning brought little relief. My husband and I wordlessly hurry outside at first light, dreading what new unsettling discoveries this day would bring. Our children follow close behind, their faces mirroring our tense apprehension. Again we find the trail, clear as day, lined on both sides by more crudely etched symbols. But now also hanging from branches the entire length of the path are mysterious dark objects. Only when the light hits them do we realize with horror that they are bones, not from any animal we recognize, but something primal and unnerving. My mind screams at us to flee this cursed place, but the trail seems to be the only way out. Hands clenched, heart pounding, we hastily pack up and make our way down the marked path. The swaying bones appear to point us onward. A chorus of sinister whispers and echoing laughter follows from the shadows as we scramble along, not looking back. Finally, we burst out of the trees and see our car, a symbol of safety. We hurriedly throw in our gear and peel out down the dirt road away from the woods that had toyed with us for 2 days. Too filled with dread at what we endure to speak, we drive in silence for hours until buildings and people reappear. Only then does the crushing fear loosen its viz-like grip. We trade bewildered, exhausted looks, grateful to have escaped and vowing to never camp again. It was supposed to be a fun weekend camping trip in the lush green forest, just the two of us connecting with nature and escaping the stresses of daily life. We had it all planned out, hiking along scenic trails during the day, then cozying up together in our tent at night. But things took a terrifying turn, and now I can't erase the chilling events from my mind. We were deep in the woods when we first came upon the dilapidated cabin. It was so overgrown with vines and moss that it was nearly invisible, tucked away from the main path. The wood looked weathered and brittle, with boarded-up windows and a sagging roof. At first it struck me as creepy, like something straight out of a horror movie. But my partner was fascinated by it, suggesting we explore inside. Always up for an adventure, I reluctantly agreed. Pushing open the creaky wooden door, we were hit with an earthy, damp smell. Every surface was coated in years of dust and dirt. Cobwebs draped across the corners like wispy curtains. The cabin couldn't have been more than 15 feet square, with a simple layout, a small kitchen area, a wooden bench, a rickety bed frame. We joked about who would have lived here: a grizzled old gold miner? Bigfoot? Despite my unease, there was something intriguing about being inside the ruins of someone's former remote home. We'd imagined what their daily life must have been like, isolated from the outside world. As we chatted, I began feeling a bit more at ease, but I still couldn't shake the sense that we were being watched. When the sun started to set, we decided to make camp inside the cabin for the night. We rolled out our sleeping bags on the dirt floor and ate a modest dinner. Curling up together, we fell asleep to the chorus of crickets and owls outside. I woke some time later to an ear-splitting bang. Bolting upright, my heart pounded as I tried to place the noise. Had part of the cabin collapsed? My partner was already on their feet, peering out the dust-coated windows with a flashlight. Nothing seemed to miss outside in the inky black night. We cautiously looked around inside with our lights, searching for the source. That's when I noticed scratches on the floor near the bed. Kneeling down, I recoiled in shock. Someone had crudely carved, "Leave now or suffer." My partner begged me that we go, their usual bravado replaced by a quavering voice. But the message left me more intrigued than frightened. Running away meant we might never uncover the cabin's secrets, and so we decided to stay, at least until morning. Settling back down to try and sleep, we were jolted again by a loud thumping coming from the walls. The whole cabin seemed to tremble. This was no accident. Someone, or something, wanted us out. My partner suddenly jumped up and grabbed the hatchet we used for firewood. For protection, I assumed. Neither of us slept another wink that night. We just huddled close, waiting for whatever may come when daylight broke. As soon as the first morning rays filtered through the filthy windows, we quickly gathered our things. Just as we were about to head out the door, another deafening bang rang out. This time, it was clearly coming from the crumbling brick chimney on the far wall. My partner raised the hatchet and crept toward the fireplace. The banging grew louder, more insistent. Heart thrumming, I watched as they reached up into the chimney flue, ready to confront whatever was inside. A pale, skeletal hand shot down, clutching my partner's arm. They let out a panicked yell as the hand tried to yank them upward. Gripped by terror, I grabbed the hatchet and hacked at the arm, over and over until it relinquished its grip. A howl of pain echoed from deep inside the chimney. Stumbling backward, my partner and I bolted for the door. We ran until we reached the car, not stopping to look back. It was only once we were safe inside that we broke down, clinging to each other while replaying the horrors in our minds. Of course, we went back against our better judgment. Days later, we returned with police to investigate the cabin. What they discovered under the floorboards made my skin crawl. Human remains, 5 partial skeletons. Forensics said they'd been decomposing for decades. The walls were etched with bizarre symbols and disturbing ramblings about a custodian who keeps the woods clean. Among the nonsensical phrases was a warning: leave the curios alone. Is that what we'd done by entering the cabin? Disturbed some evil spirit, some monstrous caretaker who didn't take kindly to visitors. I'll never comprehend what sort of dark atrocities took place in that cabin, and I'll certainly never view the woods the same way. I now know that true horror can lurk in the most remote places, hidden from the civilized world. We were lucky to escape with our lives and sanity intact. Others, as evidenced by the grisly remains, were not so fortunate. It was supposed to be an adventurous weekend camping trip with my closest friends from high school. We'd have been planning it for weeks, going over the supply checklist, choosing the perfect secluded campsite, requesting time off from our jobs. The 5 of us were filled with eager anticipation as we set off early Saturday morning, ready for a fun break from our regular lives. The drive to the campground we selected took nearly 5 hours from our hometown. We passed the town joyfully, though, blasting our favorite music and joking around nonstop. The mood was light and exuberant. Everyone was simply happy to be embarking on this mini vacation together. When we finally arrived at our destination in the early afternoon, we quickly tracked down our reserved campsite. It was a beautiful clearing surrounded by soaring evergreen trees, with a bubbling creek nearby that completed the idyllic scene. We eagerly pitched our tents, inflated sleeping pads, and rolled out sleeping bags. Next, my friends helped me pile logs and kindling to assemble a stone fire pit, while others organized our food and supplies. With camp set up, we couldn't wait to explore the wilderness area around us. We laced up our hiking boots and ventured out on a winding forest trail, taking in our magnificent natural surroundings. My athletic buddies challenged each other to climbing contests on the massive trees and skipping competitions across the rushing creek waters. Their playful banter and laughter echoed through the tranquil woods. As the sun gradually sank below the towering pines and firs, we realized it was time to turn back to camp before nightfall. That's when I first noticed the overgrown side path diverging from the main trail. So subtle it was nearly invisible. Maybe it was unwise, but curiosity instantly overpowered me. I called my friends over to come explore the narrow trail with me, not wanting to venture to the creepy area alone. Pushing through dense underbrush and tangled branches, we came upon a small, gloomy clearing. An ominous sight awaited us in the middle, a large oak tree with a badly decomposed body, hanging limply from a thick branch by a coarse rope. There was no doubt, upon examining the horrific scene, that this was the remains of an old hanging. Shocked, we immediately scrambled backwards away from the tree and its macabre discovery. Questions raced through my mind. How long had the body been rotting there? Who was the victim? Why had they been killed? The mood shifted instantly, unease creeping over our previously carefree group as we hurried in silence back to the safety of our camp. Everyone was thoroughly disturbed and spooked. My friends discussed heading to the ranger station to report our gruesome find, but I somehow convinced them to wait until morning light. No one felt much like hiking anymore, so we all remained close to our tents as the sun slowly set. Sitting around the crackling fire later, we picked at our camping food, appetites dulled by the ghastly vision seared into our brains. One friend retreated to his tent early, too rattled to keep chatting. Shadows from the flames danced menacingly just beyond the ring of firelight. Any small snapping sound from the inky woods made us jump now. Sleep did not come easy for any of us that night. At the very first glimpse of sunrise, we hastily packed up camp, wanting to flee the area as quickly as possible. As I loaded my gear into my car, I noticed what appeared to be faint markings carved into a nearby tree, almost invisible under moss and lichens. Looking closer, I realized it was a hand-carved grave marker with one chilling word, Elizabeth. A cold chill went down my spine reading the name. We drove straight to the ranger station after that, anxiously recounting our traumatic discovery from the previous day. The ranger solemnly listened, furrowed brows showing his concern over our story. He firmly thanked us for reporting the situation promptly and assured us they would handle it right away. I felt immense relief leaving the campground behind, happy to be putting distance between myself and that disturbing overgrown plot. During the long journey home, I couldn't stop replaying the horrific scene in my mind. Who was Elizabeth? How and why did her life end so tragically in the deep forest? And who hung that decomposed body from the oak? A gruesome warning for others who dared to tread near the site. We hadn't encountered another soul all weekend in that isolated area. In the end, I realized some questions are better left unanswered. One thing I am certain of now is that I will not be returning to camp in those particular woods again anytime soon. The memory of stumbling upon that makeshift graveyard still gives me chills when I least expect it. While my friends made light of the incident later on, claiming it at least made our camping trip more thrilling, I know the dark truth. What we unearthed that day was a long-buried tragedy that should have remained undisturbed. I can only hope the spirits who still linger in those shadowy woods have somehow found peace. Our innocent weekend getaway accidentally unleashed past demons that will haunt me forever. If you enjoyed these stories, share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you had similar encounters, please share your experiences too. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe as it supports me a lot.